You wake up before the alarm not because you're rested, but because your body won't let you sleep any longer. Your knees feel tight, your lower back feels locked, and your hips ache like they've aged decades overnight. You haven't even stood up yet, but the pain is already there, waiting. For millions of people, this has become normal. Doctors often call it wear and tear, something inevitable, something you just manage for the rest of your life. But what if that explanation is incomplete? What if the real source of your joint pain isn't your joints at all? What if it's inflammation spreading quietly through your entire body? And what if one of the most powerful ways to turn it down isn't a pill, injection, or surgery, but something shockingly simple? Not eating? Fasting activates biological repair systems most people never access. And once you understand what it does inside your body, joint pain will never look the same again. Joint pain is usually explained as a mechanical failure. Cartilage wears down, joints grind, bones rub together, and pain follows. This explanation sounds logical, especially as people age. After all, joints are used constantly for decades. But this view leaves out an important detail. Many people with significant joint damage experience very little pain, while others with minimal visible damage suffer intensely. If pain were purely mechanical, these patterns wouldn't exist. This inconsistency tells us that pain isn't just about structure. It's also about biology, chemistry, and inflammation happening beneath the surface. Pain is not a direct measure of damage. Pain is a signal generated by the nervous system in response to perceived threats. Inflammation amplifies those signals. When inflammatory chemicals circulate through the body, they sensitize nerve endings, lower pain thresholds, and exaggerate discomfort. This means joints can hurt more not because they are more damaged, but because they are more inflamed. Understanding this distinction is critical because inflammation is not fixed. Unlike bone structure, inflammation can rise and fall depending on how the body is functioning internally. Inflammation exists on a spectrum. Acute inflammation is short-lived and helpful. It appears after injuries or infections and disappears once healing begins. Chronic inflammation is different. It lingers quietly, often unnoticed, for years. It doesn't cause obvious swelling or redness, but it continuously irritates tissues and disrupts normal repair processes. This low-grade inflammation slowly degrades joint cartilage, stiffens connective tissue, and increases pain sensitivity. Over time, it becomes a major driver of chronic joint discomfort. One of the biggest contributors to chronic inflammation in modern life is constant eating. Humans did not evolve to eat continuously from morning to night. Historically, food availability fluctuated. There were periods of eating and periods without food. Today, meals and snacks are available around the clock. This constant intake keeps insulin elevated, digestion active, and immune signaling switched on. The body rarely enters a true repair state. Instead, it remains stuck in processing mode, which gradually fuels inflammation. The digestive system plays a central role in regulating inflammation. Every meal triggers immune activity in the gut. This is normal. The gut contains trillions of bacteria, and the immune system constantly monitors what passes through the intestinal lining. When the gut barrier is strong, this process is tightly controlled. When the barrier weakens, problems begin. Modern diets high in processed foods, refined carbohydrates, and industrial oils damage this barrier over time, increasing intestinal permeability. When the gut barrier becomes more permeable, bacterial fragments escape into the bloodstream. One of the most inflammatory of these fragments is lipopolysaccharide, commonly called LPS. LPS is found on the outer membrane of certain gut bacteria. When it enters circulation, the immune system treats it as a serious threat. In response, immune cells release inflammatory cytokines designed to fight infection. But when LPS leaks chronically, inflammation becomes constant rather than protective. This inflammatory response doesn't stay confined to the gut. Cytokines circulate through the bloodstream, reaching joints, muscles, and connective tissue. Joint tissues are especially sensitive to these signals. Inflammatory chemicals disrupt cartilage maintenance, increase fluid pressure inside joints, and stimulate pain receptors. Over time, joints become stiff, swollen, and painful, even without acute injury. This is why digestive issues and joint pain so often appear together. They are connected by immune signaling. Fasting interrupts this cycle at its source. When you stop eating, digestive activity slows dramatically. The gut is no longer exposed to constant food particles, sugars, and inflammatory compounds. This gives the intestinal lining a chance to repair itself. Tight junctions between intestinal cells strengthen, reducing permeability. With fewer bacterial fragments entering the bloodstream, immune activation decreases. Inflammation begins to settle, not just locally but systemically. Beyond gut repair, fasting triggers powerful metabolic shifts. Within hours of the last meal, insulin levels fall. Blood sugar stabilizes, and the body begins transitioning from storing energy to accessing it. This shift alone reduces inflammatory signaling, as chronically elevated insulin is itself pro-inflammatory. But deeper changes occur as fasting continues and the body switches fuel sources. Between 12 and 18 hours after eating, the liver depletes its glycogen stores. Glycogen is stored glucose used for short-term energy. Once it runs low, the body must find another fuel source. It turns to stored fat. Fatty acids are released and converted into ketone bodies. This process, known as ketosis, is a natural metabolic state humans evolved to enter regularly during periods of food scarcity. Ketones are not merely emergency fuel. They are efficient energy molecules that produce less oxidative stress than glucose. One ketone in particular, beta-hydroxybutyrate, plays a key role in regulating inflammation. As its levels rise during fasting, it begins interacting with immune pathways inside cells. This is where fasting's effects on joint pain become especially significant. Inside immune cells exists a molecular complex called the NLP3 inflammasome. This structure acts like an alarm system, detecting danger signals and triggering inflammation. In chronic inflammatory states, the NLP3 inflammasome becomes overactive. It continues firing even when no real threat is present. This persistent activation contributes to joint inflammation, tissue degradation, and pain. Beta-hydroxybutyrate directly inhibits the NLRP3 inflammasome. This means fasting doesn't just reduce inflammation indirectly. It shuts down one of the primary molecular switches responsible for sustaining it. When this inflammasome is suppressed, the production of inflammatory cytokines decreases. Joints experience less swelling, reduced stiffness, and improved mobility. This mechanism has been demonstrated in multiple peer-reviewed studies. Fasting also changes the behavior of circulating immune cells. Monocytes, a type of white blood cell, play a major role in chronic inflammation. These cells act as first responders, releasing inflammatory signals when they detect threats. In chronic inflammatory conditions, monocytes remain overly reactive. Fasting reduces both their number and their inflammatory sensitivity. Within roughly 20 hours of fasting, studies show a measurable reduction in circulating monocytes. Additionally, these cells express fewer surface receptors that trigger inflammatory responses. This makes them less likely to overreact to bacterial fragments like LPS. The immune system becomes calmer and more regulated, allowing tissues including joints to recover rather than remain in a defensive state. Another critical benefit of fasting is the activation of autophagy. Autophagy is the body's internal cleanup system. Cells use it to break down damaged proteins, malfunctioning structures, and cellular debris. This process prevents the accumulation of dysfunctional components that generate inflammation. Without sufficient autophagy, cells become stressed, inefficient, and inflammatory. Joint cartilage relies heavily on autophagy for maintenance. Cartilage cells, called chondrocytes, are responsible for producing and repairing the cartilage matrix. Over time, these cells accumulate damage from mechanical stress and inflammation. If autophagy is impaired, damaged components remain inside the cells, reducing their ability to maintain healthy cartilage and increasing inflammatory signaling. Fasting is one of the strongest natural triggers of autophagy. When nutrients are scarce, cells shift priorities from growth to repair. Autophagy increases, allowing damaged cellular components to be removed and recycled. This process is essential for long-term joint health because cartilage has limited regenerative capacity. Supporting cellular cleanup helps slow degeneration rather than simply masking symptoms. Beta-hydroxybutyrate enhances a specific form of autophagy focused on mitochondrial repair. Mitochondria produce energy, but when damaged, they generate excessive inflammatory signals. Removing dysfunctional mitochondria reduces oxidative stress and inflammation. In cartilage cells, this process supports healthier energy production and reduces degenerative signaling associated with arthritis. Clinical studies reinforce these biological mechanisms. Patients with osteoarthritis who participate in structured fasting programs often report significant reductions in pain and stiffness. Improvements in physical function are commonly observed. Importantly, these benefits frequently persist long after fasting ends, suggesting lasting changes in inflammatory regulation rather than temporary symptom suppression. Similar outcomes have been observed in rheumatoid arthritis. Extended fasting periods are associated with reductions in swollen joints, morning stiffness, and inflammatory blood markers. These changes reflect real physiological improvements. While fasting is not a cure, it consistently demonstrates the ability to reduce inflammatory burden and improve quality of life. From an evolutionary perspective, these responses make sense. Humans evolved in environments where food availability was unpredictable. During fasting periods, survival depended on conserving energy, reducing inflammation, and maintaining mobility. Biological systems evolved to suppress inflammation during food scarcity, not increase it. Joint health was preserved to support movement and hunting. Modern lifestyles disrupt this evolutionary rhythm. Constant food intake keeps the body in a fed state, suppressing repair mechanisms and maintaining chronic inflammation. Over time, this contributes to widespread joint pain that is often accepted as inevitable aging. In reality, it may reflect metabolic imbalance rather than irreversible damage. Applying fasting does not require extreme deprivation. Many benefits begin within a relatively short fasting window. Extending the overnight fast by eating dinner earlier and breakfast later can initiate metabolic and inflammatory changes. Intermittent fasting allows regular activation of repair pathways without prolonged food restriction. Consistency matters more than duration. Regular exposure to the fasted state trains the body to switch efficiently between fuel sources and repair modes. Over time, inflammatory signaling decreases, and metabolic flexibility improves. This adaptability is essential for long-term joint health and overall resilience. Food quality during eating periods is equally important. Whole foods reduce inflammatory load, support gut health, and provide essential nutrients for tissue repair. Processed foods, refined sugars, and industrial oils undermine the benefits of fasting by damaging the gut barrier and promoting inflammation. Hydration is critical during fasting. Water supports circulation, detoxification, and cellular function. Electrolytes such as sodium and potassium help maintain nerve and muscle function. Adequate hydration ensures fasting remains supportive rather than stressful. Fasting is not appropriate for everyone. Certain medical conditions require caution. However, when used thoughtfully, fasting works with the body's natural design. It restores balance rather than forcing change. The goal is not deprivation, but creating space for healing. Joint pain is often framed as an unavoidable decline. Biology suggests otherwise. Inflammation is dynamic. Metabolism is adaptable. Cells respond to environmental signals. Fasting changes those signals in a way that favors repair over damage. Understanding these mechanisms reframes joint pain. Rather than being a permanent failure, it becomes a message from the body indicating excessive inflammatory load. Addressing that load through metabolic rest can restore function and reduce discomfort. Sometimes the most powerful intervention is subtraction rather than addition. Removing constant eating allows inflammation to settle, repair systems activate, joints regain mobility. The body does what it evolved to do when given the opportunity. This is not about extremes or punishment. It is about respecting biological rhythms that modern life has disrupted. Fasting reintroduces those rhythms in a controlled, intentional way. When inflammation decreases, pain thresholds normalize, movement becomes easier, morning stiffness fades. These changes often occur before significant weight loss, highlighting that metabolic shifts, not mechanical unloading, drive early improvements. Weight loss may enhance benefits, but it is not the primary mechanism. Ketone signaling, immune regulation, gut repair, and autophagy operate independently of body weight. This explains why even lean individuals experience joint relief from fasting. Joint health depends on cellular health. Cells respond to energy availability, inflammatory signals, and repair demands. Fasting optimizes all three, creating an internal environment where healing becomes possible. Pain management often focuses on suppressing symptoms. Anti-inflammatory drugs block pathways temporarily but do not address underlying causes. Fasting reduces inflammation at its source, upstream of symptom generation. This approach empowers individuals. Instead of relying solely on external interventions, people can engage their body's innate capacity for regulation and repair. The science behind fasting continues to evolve, but the mechanisms are increasingly clear. Ketones are signaling molecules. Autophagy is essential. Inflammation is modifiable. These truths reshape how joint pain should be understood. Joint pain is not just about joints. It is about systems interacting: gut, immune system, metabolism, and cellular repair. Fasting influences all of them simultaneously. Modern medicine often isolates symptoms. Biology is integrated. Fasting works because it respects that integration rather than targeting one pathway in isolation. When fasting is approached intentionally, it becomes a tool rather than a stressor. The body adapts quickly, especially when supported with hydration and nutrient-dense meals. Joint relief often arrives gradually. Subtle improvements accumulate. Reduced stiffness leads to more movement, which further supports joint health. This positive feedback loop reinforces healing. Movement itself becomes easier when inflammation subsides. Reduced pain encourages activity, which improves circulation and cartilage nutrition. This is how small metabolic changes can create large functional improvements. Fasting initiates the process. The body completes it. Understanding fasting removes fear around hunger. Hunger becomes a signal of metabolic transition, not danger. The body has evolved to handle periods without food. During those periods, it does not fall apart, it repairs. Joint pain does not define aging. It reflects internal conditions that can be influenced. Fasting is one method among many, but it is uniquely powerful because it activates multiple repair pathways simultaneously. This is not a rejection of medical care. It is an acknowledgement that biology offers tools medicine often overlooks. When inflammation quiets, the nervous system recalibrates. Pain signals diminish. Movement feels natural again. The goal is resilience, not perfection. Periodic fasting supports resilience by restoring metabolic flexibility. Joint health improves when the body is allowed to cycle between feeding and fasting as it evolved to do. The modern environment encouraged constant consumption. Fasting reintroduces balance. Balance reduces inflammation. Reduced inflammation protects joints. This is not a quick fix. It is a biological reset. Resetting inflammation changes how the body experiences movement. Movement without pain restores confidence and independence. Confidence encourages consistency. Consistency reinforces healing. Healing is not passive. It is supported by biological signals. Fasting alters those signals. Altered signals change outcomes. Outcomes determine quality of life. Quality of life matters more than symptom suppression. Joint pain steals freedom. Reducing inflammation restores it. Fasting is a doorway, not a destination. Through that doorway lies repair. Repair changes how joints age. Aging does not have to mean constant pain. Pain is information. Fasting helps decode it. Decoded signals lead to better choices. Better choices support long-term health. Long-term health supports mobility. Mobility supports independence. Independence defines vitality. Vitality is not accidental. It is supported by biology. Sometimes the most powerful medicine is knowing when not to eat. Joint pain doesn't have to be the sentence we're told it is. Your body isn't broken, it's responding to the signals you give it every day. When you reduce constant inflammation and allow real repair to happen, pain can loosen its grip, movement can return, and mornings don't have to feel like a battle. Fasting isn't about suffering or extremes, it's about giving your body the space to do what it was designed to do. If this changed the way you think about joint pain, share it with someone who needs hope. Subscribe for more science-backed insights, and remember sometimes, healing starts not by adding more, but by knowing when to pause. If this video inspired you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share to family and friends. And also if you require any video related to health, just do comment.